Hey everybody. I just looked over and noticed one of my blue mystery snails was all stretched out and crawling across the plants, and I came over here to get some video of it, and it obviously saw me come over here and point the camera at it, and it just pulled itself back in, let go, and now it's falling to safety, or at least as far as it's concerned, it's falling to safety. So I shot a video about these guys not too long ago, and I found it interesting that it was all the way up in my water sprite. I know they can climb up into the Java fern right here, but this one was all the way up near the surface of the water, up on top of my water sprite. I have since seen them both up there. I have two of these snails in the same tank. You can see the other one is in the back right there. Maybe we'll get to see them crawl a little bit after all. But several of my viewers informed me that these snails actually can create little bubbles of air in their shell, and they can float to the surface, and then they just float around until they bump into stuff, and then they can grab a hold and climb out of the water. It's sort of a free way to travel, I guess. That's pretty nifty. If you were in a stream or a river, you just let go, float, and go on downstream. So it would be a quick way to escape, a good way to get around, and extremely efficient. But I've never seen mine doing that. I've never seen them float like that. I have seen them, I always jokingly call them my parkour snails, the way they seem to leap off of things. They definitely seem to jump from the edges of leaves and fall to, lower strata or all the way down to the bottom. Sometimes it seems like they're just trying to get around. Other times it seems like they're trying to escape because I've disturbed them, which I'm not really sure if that's what we're seeing here or not, but it doesn't seem like he's trying to escape me necessarily. Usually they'll just sort of tuck themselves into a defensive position, and that's why they fall to the bottom. This one just seems like he wanted to get to the bottom, and now he's crawling on along. I can hold the camera a little more steady when I'm not trying to squat down. Sorry about all that bouncing around like that. But they're really interesting animals. I never thought I would find snails to be one of the more interesting animals in my tank, but they are. Oh, and look. See my clown pleco's face sticking out from under the rocks down there? That's another fish that we don't get to see very often in this tank. I'm afraid if I move around to the end of the tank and try to look in, it will startle him and he'll dash back into hiding. So I guess this is probably as good of a look as we're going to get unless it comes out completely. I've been trying to put less algae wafers in this tank to force the algae-eating animals, such as that clown pleco and these snails, to do their job a little more. And it seems to be working. Now, one of the things that separates mystery snails from so-called nuisance snails, I have since come to embrace the snails in my tank. I really don't find any of them to be nuisance snails anymore, but that is largely a matter of opinion. One of the things that separates them from the so-called nuisance snails, however, is the mystery snails will not eat live vegetation, but what they will eat is the dead material out of the vegetation. So you see the frond of the Java fern back there. It looks sort of skeletonized. That is not because the fish ate holes in a live, healthy leaf. That was probably a leaf that, much like this one here, had some rough edges and some dead spots, and they get some brown spots in the middle. That's not uncommon at all. As plants cycle through, some leaves die off, new ones grow in, and these mystery snails actually help clean up some of that dying and dead vegetation. So that could also be from the rubber-lipped pleco. The clown pleco. Rubber-lipped pleco pretty much acts the same way. The bristle nose, you're going to get pretty much the same experience with just about any of those fish. And they, I find, don't really do a lot of damage per se. They're not necessarily eating the plant itself. But if you've got a lot of growth on the plant, they will, as off-walks grazers, they'll scrape the surface. They'll scour the surface just like they do on your rocks and your plants and your wood. I mean, if you think about this piece of wood there, look how beautiful the texture and the grain and everything. There's no algae on it. That's because a fish with tiny, tiny, tiny little brush-like teeth, little shards of glass-like teeth, scrapes that, and he scrapes it clean. It's basically like sandpapering it. Okay, now imagine that same process happening to the algae that's growing on the leaves. You know, so it's not necessarily that the pleco is eating the leaf. It's just trying to graze off what's growing on the leaf. The problem is it has such rough teeth, it can do damage. So that could be a little bit of damage from that, or it could simply be, as I was earlier describing, some dead tissue within the plant itself, and then the snails come along and make short work of it. Either way, it's not an issue for me, and it's not a lot of dead material in my tank. It's a lot of missing material. You don't see, you know, brown growth and everything in there, but it's not dead brown growth where it's going to be rotting and decaying and adding to my bioload and all that. So all in all, the snails really do help with the cleanup crew. And as far as snails that are considered to be nuisance snails, I've never really had an issue with them. I would imagine if your tank was so spotlessly clean that you just didn't have any algae or offwalks or any dead vegetation or any extra fish food, and the snails were absolutely desperate for something to eat, they might start munching on your vegetation a little bit or something like that. But I've never really experienced, you know, even tanks that have snails crawling all around in them. My purple spotted gudgeon tank is a perfect example. You look in there and you can see snails all over the plants, and the plants themselves don't have holes in it. You know, I think about what my outdoor garden plants look like when snails go through there. They will destroy plants. They eat holes in them. They notch edges in the leaves. And that's what I was always expecting with these so-called nuisance snails. And I've never seen it, you know, so I just kind of look at them as maybe an eyesore, if you want to call them that. Maybe some people don't like the look of having a bunch of snails in their tank. Again, it doesn't bother me. Just, you know, that's an aquatic environment. You see snails crawling around in it. But I've never seen them cause any damage in my tank. I've never lost any plants. I've never seen holes in them. If they do any damage, it's so minor that I've never even noticed it. So I don't really worry about the nuisance snails anymore. And if if I get too many in one tank, or they're obviously on the glass and I can pick them off easily enough, I've got plenty of fish that do eat them. I did actually get a suggestion from one viewer. As often as I do my tank cam videos of butterbean eating snails, I did one recently of some of my loaches eating, but I had them eating shrimp pellets. And I got a suggestion to try feeding the loaches some live snails the way I do butterbean, and then everybody will get a good look at how effective loaches can be at snail control. So that's a video I will definitely be doing in the very near future. That's an easy one for me. I've got a couple of tanks that have loaches in them, and I know for a fact that they do love the snails when I throw them in there. So look forward to that, and make sure you're subscribed. That way you won't miss anything else I got coming up. We did get to watch that snail make its way halfway around the tank. So there you go. Anyway, make sure you're subscribed. Thanks for watching. Don't forget, this one is my 20-gallon Angelfish tank. And I'll see you real soon in the next one.